Days passed and collectors began calling, their voices harsh, demanding repayment, and Hannah sold her jewelry, her car, even her small apartment. But it wasn't enough, and she found herself working double shifts at a community kitchen, cooking meals for homeless families. Pretending her exhaustion was temporary, one night, while handing a warm bowl of soup to a shivering child, she noticed a familiar figure sitting quietly at the corner table, the same composed man Min Yi, watching her not with possessiveness but with quiet respect, and she approached him, asking why he kept appearing, and he answered that kindness like hers was rare, that she helped others even while drowning, and she replied that helping people was the only thing that made her feel less empty. He offered again to settle her debts, but she refused, saying she didn't want to owe anyone, especially someone involved in dangerous things, and he surprised her by smiling faintly, telling her she already owed him nothing, that he simply wanted to see her safe. Yet she insisted on handling it herself, and instead asked if he could help find a job for one of the homeless women, and he agreed without hesitation, making a call, and by the next morning, the woman had employment, and Hana realized his power extended far beyond intimidation. Weeks later, the collectors cornered her in a narrow alley after her shift, their voices rough, demanding immediate payment, and she tried to reason, offering a schedule, but one of them grabbed her arm, and fear surged, until a car stopped abruptly, and Minye stepped out. His calm demeanor replaced by something colder, his mere presence enough to make the men retreat. He didn't hurt them, he simply spoke quietly, and they left. And Hana, shaken, whispered thank you, though she felt conflicted about relying on him. He drove her home, and during the ride, he confessed that he had first seen her months ago at a hospital, when she donated blood for a stranger without knowing who they were, and that stranger had been someone important to him. And since then, he had watched her, not out of control, but admiration, because she chose compassion repeatedly even when it cost her everything. She listened silently, unsure how to respond, yet something softened in her, and she admitted she was tired of being strong, tired of pretending she wasn't hurt, and he said quietly that she didn't need to pretend around him. As winter deepened, Hana continued volunteering, and one night a fire broke out in a nearby shelter, chaos spreading, people panicking, smoke filling the air, and without thinking, she rushed inside to guide children out, coughing, her eyes burning, and when she emerged carrying a small boy, she collapsed, and the last thing she saw was Minyi running toward her, his composed mask shattered by fear. She woke in a hospital bed, oxygen mask over her face, and he sat beside her, relief evident. And she joked weakly that he should stop appearing during dramatic moments. And he replied that she had risked her life for strangers, and she said they weren't strangers, just people who needed help. He held her hand gently, telling her that she mattered too, that her life was valuable, and she felt warmth spread through her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, her sister visited, guilt written across her face, apologizing for everything, saying she hadn't realized the pain she caused, and Hana forgave her sincerely, hugging her because resentment only made her heavier, and her sister cried, promising to support her, but Hana shook her head, saying she didn't want anything except for her sister to live kindly. After she recovered, Minyi invited her to see a community center he funded anonymously, explaining he wanted her advice on how to improve it, and she walked through the building, suggesting simple changes like a reading corner, a counseling room, and he listened carefully, implementing each idea. And she realized he wasn't just powerful, he was willing to change because of her. Over time, rumors about him surfaced, stories of danger, yet she also saw how he quietly helped people, paying hospital bills, protecting small businesses, and she began to understand that he carried darkness, but chose light when he could. One evening, as they watched children play in the center she helped design, he admitted that he had chosen her long ago, not as possession, but as someone he wanted beside him, someone who reminded him of humanity, and she felt her heart race, not from fear, but from the possibility of something new. Something built on respect rather than obligation. She looked at him, remembering the wedding day, the tears, the loss, and realized that her kindness, the very thing that had made her vulnerable, had also led her here, to someone who saw her worth when she felt invisible. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, she smiled softly, the first genuine smile in months, unaware that her story had already begun transforming not just her life, but his as well. The next morning arrived quietly, yet Hannah felt a strange calm settle over her, as if the chaos of her past had begun to loosen its grip. But peace rarely comes without testing. And as she unlocked the community center, she noticed a group of unfamiliar men standing across the street. Watching too carefully, their presence heavy with unspoken tension, she pretended not to notice, greeting the children who ran toward her with laughter. But inside she sensed something shifting, and by noon Min Yi arrived earlier than usual, his expression unreadable, scanning the street before stepping inside, asking gently if anything unusual had happened. And she mentioned the men, trying to sound casual, though she saw the flicker of concern in his eyes. He assured her everything was under control, yet he stayed longer than usual, helping stack books, his large hands awkwardly holding colorful storybooks. And she teased him softly, saying he looked out of place, and he replied that he didn't mind if it meant she was safe, which made her heart tighten unexpectedly. Later that evening, as she walked home, she noticed one of the men following at a distance, her steps quickening until a car stopped beside her, and Min Yi opened the door, telling her to get in, his voice calm but firm. And she obeyed, realizing he had anticipated this. Inside the car, she asked if she was in danger, and he hesitated before admitting that her ex-husband's debts had been sold to another group unwilling to negotiate, and they believed pressuring her might force payment. And she sighed, feeling the past pulling her back again. But he reassured her he would handle it, though she saw the tension in his jaw. She told him she didn't want violence, that she didn't want anyone hurt because of her, and he nodded, promising he would try another way. Days passed with heightened caution, and Hannah focused even more on helping others, organizing a winter clothing drive, her kindness drawing volunteers, including her sister, who worked quietly beside her, trying to rebuild their bond, and Hannah accepted her presence without resentment, because forgiveness had become her strength. One evening, an elderly man arrived, shivering, refusing to take a coat because he said others needed it more, and Hannah knelt beside him, wrapping the coat around his shoulders anyway, telling him warmth wasn't something to postpone, and Min Yi watched. From the doorway, something soft in his gaze, as if witnessing a language he had never learned before. That night, he invited her for dinner at a small, unassuming restaurant, far from luxury, and she laughed at the simplicity, saying she expected something extravagant. And he admitted he chose it because she liked quiet places, and they talked for hours, sharing childhood memories. Her stories filled with small sacrifices, his filled with loneliness and survival, and she realized he had built walls not from cruelty but from necessity. As they walked outside, snow began to fall, light and silent, and she reached out to catch a flake, smiling, and he looked at her as though that simple moment meant more than any victory he had ever achieved. Suddenly, a car sped toward them, stopping abruptly, the door opening, and a man stepped out, shouting demands, accusing her of hiding behind powerful protection. And Hannah instinctively stepped forward, telling him she would repay everything, begging him not to escalate. Her voice trembling but sincere. The man laughed harshly, saying kindness didn't pay debts, and before Min Yi could intervene, Hannah removed the necklace her mother had given her, offering it, saying it was all she had left. And the unexpected gesture stunned everyone, including Min Yi, who watched her with disbelief because she was willing to give away her last precious memory for peace. The man hesitated, clearly not expecting compassion, and Min Yi quietly spoke to him, his tone measured, proposing a settlement, and after a tense silence, the man accepted, leaving without violence, and as the car disappeared, Hannah exhaled shakily, her hands cold. And Min Yi gently returned the necklace, saying he had already settled the debt fully. She didn't need to sacrifice anymore, and tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from the realization that someone was finally protecting her without asking her to endure alone. Weeks turned into months, and the community center flourished, children laughing, families finding support, and Hannah's presence became a quiet anchor, while Min Yi gradually stepped further into the light, funding programs openly, distancing himself from darker dealings, influenced by her steady compassion. One afternoon, a letter arrived addressed to Hana, written by the little boy she had rescued from the fire, thanking her for saving his life and saying he wanted to become kind like her. And she read it aloud, her voice breaking, and Min Yi listened silently, deeply moved, realizing that her impact extended far beyond what she saw. As spring approached, he took her to a hill overlooking the city, the skyline glowing at sunset, and he admitted that meeting her had changed him, that he once believed power meant control. But she showed him it could mean protection and kindness, and she smiled softly, saying she never intended to change him. She only wanted to help where she could. He looked at her, eyes steady, and asked if she would stay beside him, not as someone he rescued, but as someone equal, and she felt her heart steady, remembering the pain she had survived, the people she helped, Strength she discovered, and she nodded gently, not as a dramatic gesture, but as a quiet decision born from trust, and the wind carried their silence across the city as the last light faded, leaving them standing together, no longer defined by loss, but by the compassion that brought them there. To watch my upcoming videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. I need your subscription. Support us by subscribing to my channel. Thank you.